I'm hungry.
Joe, don't eat the science.
Awesome.
If only I
Thank
could
you.
put on a woman's voice, it would have been perfect.
Oh yeah. I think this is an exciting episode. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, hell
It
yeah!
is.
Certainly outside the norm.
Well, we have done movies, we have done TV shows, we have done books, we have done games. What is it, Gio, that we have forgot to do?
Comic books. This is our
Yeah,
first time.
first time. So for this episode, we're doing not that you can, you know, tell from the name of our episode, but we're doing the comic book called Arks Issue 1, and we have the creator on our show. Hello, Rory. How you doing?
I'm very well, guys. Thanks very much for having me. I'm totally honoured to be the first comic book. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're really excited for this. I would have to say, and you'll probably, you guys will probably hear our comments pretty soon. But I really love this one. So thank you very much for being on our show and talking to us about the story, which is it's really cool.
Oh yeah.
Is there any places that you want to tell, or you want to tell people where to find you, where to find a comic? I will put some links on the episode description. But for those who are listening, if you have anything that you want to plug and direct them to.
Yeah, well, we're currently crowdfunding for our latest book, which will be, I think it will be finished before this podcast goes out. But you can buy the comic, and you can find out about future crowdfunders and whether we're going to be doing conventions and stuff at www.clickysproutwife.com, which is mine and my wife's publishing company. And then Twitter, really, at ClickyW. Yeah, we're I was saying to you guys before we came on air, we're a COVID comic, so we're brand new. So we haven't even got like a distributor or a publisher involved, which is what we're going to be doing next. So yeah, so awesome. everything you can, it's all at the clickysproutwife.com.
Awesome.
Nice.
So before we get into it, let's go into our first segment.
Define science fiction remnant.
And you guys know the drill. If you love sci-fi like we do, and you want to describe us to someone that has not listened to our show, how would you do that? You can reach out to us in our multiple different ways, and you could be on our next episode. What do you guys think? I mean, I don't get tired of this segment, because I guess mainly it's because I love science fiction so much. Do you have anything that you want to point out that called your attention from previous descriptions? Or I'm still stuck. I'm still stuck at the one that God, I do. Please forgive me. I forgot who it was. It's a couple of episodes ago, where we're described as, that conversation you're having on your way to Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
I love
but
that
with
one.
booze. Yeah, probably by the end of the episode, when I'll be drinking rum. I bet.
I just keep thinking about a bastardized line from RoboCop. Good sci-fi is where you find it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like that.
Yeah, and Rory, you're a new listener, basically.
Yes.
I don't know if you have you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you had to describe, it's very interesting to me, especially from people that start listening to us with a fresh perspective. What would be your definition from what came to mind when you heard for the first time our episodes?
I've just done a couple of Comic Cons in a quick succession, and I was struck when I was there at the difference between geeks and nerds, in that there's lots of geeks at these conventions, but I'm like a nerd. Well, if I was to describe myself as a nerd, because geeks are like kind of like the priesthood, and the nerds are like, they're like the
archbishops.
You guys talk about aliens. It was like I feel like I'm like in my sermon at the moment. I'm listening to these guys. I know what they're talking about. I loved it. Yeah, it was really great. And I was kind of curious because there was someone brought up an analogy that you guys were like the Top Gear of science fiction, and I was like, which one's Clarkson, which one's Hammond, and which one's David May? Not sure.
That was enough.
I've actually been watching The Science of Stupid with my son. So I'm probably that guy. What's his name? Which one's that one? The little guy.
Yeah, Hammond.
Hammond. Yeah, I'm probably Hammond because he does all the science shows.
Yeah, he does. He loves science.
Yeah, I remember that. That comment made me feel very honored. So.
That's great.
Ray, what is your favorite so far?
So far, well, this week, the word bromance was tweeted regarding the three of us. And I found that rather amusing. I saw Geo leaning into it so far he fell over. It was very funny.
Oh my God. Yep. Sci-fi bromance.
Yeah. That's the triangular bromance.
So we have moved from a husband, wife, and a kid to a bromance. Is that how we're going? We're migrating?
Yeah. This is like from sci-fi wife and a kid to getting into mamas and the papa stuff now.
Oh wow.
Well, if I guess my genome could have been shoved into a bacterium along with you guys and shot off to another planet,
Yeah.
So, maybe they screwed it up and put three guys in the one bacterium instead of mixing the genders. Oh well, whoops.
Well, as I know, I'm gonna be Lilith first edition.
Oh wow.
Just as long as it doesn't become BL, I'm okay.
Oh boy, he's in for a surprise. I'm gonna see Ray tonight or later today, like when he sees the last page.
Oh wow.
By the way, you guys can start calling me the cherubim.
I don't think that'll never happen, Captain Chaos.
Come on, he has a lion on it, just like me, man.
Awesome. So,
a lot of inside jokes. You have to read the comic to understand what he's on.
Yes. Please do, because we really enjoyed it. Let's move on to the next segment. We are Science Fiction Reddit.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-fi.
So, if you don't already know, surprise, surprise, this is Sci-Fi. Is the hashtag where I am trying to gather the sci-fi community together. In the past, this was a challenge for me because I was able to find sci-fi content online, but it was segregated. It was split. And I am that type of sci-fi fan that love to talk about everything sci-fi, not just Star Wars, although I love it, not just Star Trek, which I love, but everything. Buck Rogers, Galactica from the 80s, 70s.
Are you listing all the ones we haven't done yet?
Babylon 5.
Thank you.
Yes, the hashtag is still going strong. Make Robert watch Babylon 5. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Something like that.
So if you are a creator of sci-fi, of any type of creation, it could be art, it could be a podcast, it could be a book, it could be a comic book, it could be anything. Use the hashtag. If you are a fan, use the hashtag. And let's get into the discovery. I am loving how this hashtag has turned out to be. From the beginning where we started until now, it's just it's exploded. And the common theme that I keep on hearing so far is the love of the discovery. It's kind of like when you finish something and you have that hole in your heart. It's like, okay, this is done. What else can I watch? What else can I read? What else can I listen to? You always seem to find something new that is related to sci-fi. So far, this is what I have been observing lately. Aside also from all the articles that I publish, scientific articles and stuff like that I like to read, that I post for everybody to share. So yeah, I welcome everybody to share and follow in that hashtag, and let's help each other. Let's grow the community. Let's all join in and make this science community easier to reach for everybody else. What has been you could go in any order you like. What has been your particular experience this week with the hashtag?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Well, I don't mean to paraphrase myself in other episodes, but basically, whenever I want to pick on a good conversation about sci-fi, and basically I just use this hashtag, and it's like when you go to Google, that you click on "I'm feeling lucky." And that's what I do with this is sci-fi hashtag basically when I go to Twitter, and it never goes wrong. I always find fantastic conversation about very interesting topics. Most of us here probably can relate. Like Robert and I, for example, we're not much of sport people. So what we do instead of watching sport is watching documentaries. Like instead of watching the finals or something, we're watching Cosmos again for the 50th time. We love it that much. And looking for topics that are interrelated with this in a fantasy and real science realm is that is sci-fi. And it's just a great space to discuss what could be, what it is, what was, and what will be.
Yeah, for sure.
My son will watch anything by Professor Brian Cox. Loves the guy to death.
Oh wow, nice, awesome. Have you heard, Rory? I don't know. I'm not sure if you were even familiar with this. I'm sure you heard of it from our previous episodes. But
yeah.
Have you gone into that hashtag?
And of course, I haven't yet, but I did kind of was thinking, God, it like the amount of times when I'm doing stuff on Twitter, and it's just like trying to find an audience online is incredibly difficult. Like we've got a Google Doc with like 2 pages of hashtags, and each time you're like, which one am I going to use? So the idea of like creating like an umbrella hashtag would be like a place where people know they could go to get like get the good stuff. That'd be great. So we'll definitely be using it in future updates, if because it's finding an audience like for science fiction, can be quite difficult, because there's so much. The space is so dominated by certain things, especially like as an indie publisher. It's like you go there, and like we were at a convention in London last weekend, and for some reason it was just full of Doctor Who fans. I've never seen so many Doctor Who fans in my entire life, but like they were there for Doctor Who, and I'm there kind of trying to sell the wares, as it were. And it's like, oh, okay, what's your book about? It's got Doctor Who in it? No, okay, so yeah, I think it's a great idea. So
the internet black hole of SEO.
Yeah.
What hashtag to use?
I'd had the idea from a fan perspective, not necessarily as a creator. And I love it. I do listen to podcasts, as you can all see from my hashtag now playing. So it's great. Whenever I finish something, I go in there and I find, I find books. So yeah, I just wanted. I feel like I needed to clarify that that hashtag, it came from a perspective of me as a fan, not me as a creator.
Okay.
So I guess, Ray, you haven't really experienced anything that you want to.
Oh, there's been a lot of discussion about the final the final episode of the Andor series. I haven't seen it myself,
Yeah.
but
Me neither.
my understanding of it is that some people think it's awesome and some people think it's broken the canon. So there's apparently a division about the size of the Death Star trench that
When
is
does that not
dividing
happen on Star
people.
Wars? When does
Dividing
that not happen
people
in Star
about.
Wars? Yeah, Robert? In the
Yeah,
day?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I just thought I'd bring it up because, it seems to be the big Star Wars related argument this week.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but it's definitely on my list.
I'm trying to watch the rest of Halo. I want to see what happens next.
Oh yeah, Halo. So Gio, I just have to mention this. I am really excited about the boom in our Discord channel.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to say thank you, with no particular name in mind, to all the new um, users of our Discord channel. Thank you so much. It has basically just exploded, and I'm loving it. I really love the conversation. So if you guys want to join in, there's the link for our Discord in the description. Join up and let's talk. The conversation is just going strong about everything, which is something you have heard in the past. Whenever I talk about Discord, we're trying to grow, not necessarily because it's our Discord, but my goal for Discord and having a one location where you can talk just like our show about every sci-fi there is. We have a manga section, we have a anime section, we have a Doctor Who section. So we have a section for every thing that you want to talk about, and the conversation is going within the one. So when you go in, as soon as you subscribe and you agree to the terms, you can go to the roles channel and you select I like to call the sci-fi mart, like a supermarket, and you can just pick the sci-fi you want. If you want Doctor Who, you click on Doctor Who, and as soon as you click on the stuff you want, then all of a sudden you see the channels appear where you can just go ahead and chat. And this is something I have not explained before. I'm not sure why I haven't done that before, but just join in. I mean, Gio and I have been like Ray, obviously. We have been having a lot of conversations in there. Any conversation that you guys want to point out lately that you have um, enjoyed? I don't know, Ray, if you have any in particular, or Gio.
I love the new games that we added to the server too,
Oh
and
yeah,
and I
Oh,
mean,
that the
like
dice
I've
thing.
been, oh yes, and I mean, even though I actually did a very very bad decision yesterday, playing dice and losing a bunch of coins, uh,
Woolongs. This is
I'm
a
doing it again
Cowboy
today.
Bebop inspired casino.
Yes.
Yes, well, calling it a casino means the house always wins, which is why you didn't, Gio.
Indirectly, I'm part of the house, so.
Well, you need to tell the bot that before you roll.
So for all of you listening who are actually playing the Wulong Casino, you know, I have no control. That's all Spike and Jet, and they're taking all the Wulongs.
No, man, you got it wrong. This is all Faye Valentine.
You think so?
Yeah, the
Well,
300
you
years,
might
the
have a point
300
there.
years mysterious casino player woman. I mean, she's in the casino the whole time. Every time that she gets her bounty, she just goes and deposits it directly to the casino. This is her all over again. No, but I love being on the Discord channel. I was playing chess with one of our friends and listeners too the other day. Love playing chess, and also besides that, I mean, like I've been going crazy about Cyberpunk. Like since it came out, I never stopped playing it and playing it all over again. And I mean, I'm always talking about that there. With also with our listeners and followers. Um, you can talk about anything there that is sci-fi, and that's the beautiful thing about sci-fi. You know, it's such a vast universe of things that we all love. That we can always find somebody that actually can share that feeling with us. And I mean, it's wholesome, man. I love it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the
Yeah.
watch parties. I mean, everybody should come and join for watch parties. We're always doing watch parties, uh, and basically, it's fun to enjoy watching something with friends and family. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's kind of hard because everybody has a schedule and different times.
Yeah.
Especially, this is a worldwide podcast, so what's morning for me might be night for you. But it would be kind of cool if you guys will be able to make it to our watch parties. At one point we were watching the NASA launch
Oh
on the
yeah.
watch party, so yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to sit down and just watch something together.
Well, we're
um
pretty much covering the entire globe right now. We've got Europe, Southeast Asia, and the US covered. So that's like pretty much the big three.
yeah, yeah, so awesome. So if you like to be mentioned, or if you want to be on our show, basically you can actually uh, reach out to us via Twitter, via Discord, or you can leave a voicemail. And the number is 1-305-563-6334. And you could be heard on future episodes. Gio, is it your segment already?
Yes, it
Are we
is.
moving that fast?
Yep.
Shout out.
And for this segment, actually, I'm going to start with saying that we are members of an awesome network. It's Blind Knowledge. I suggest everybody to stop right now, go and check them. You can find their link in our description, or you can just basically Google Blind Knowledge Network, and you'll find them. They're very easy to find. They have a great variety of content creators. We enjoy always exchanging thoughts with them in the Discord channel with everybody. Uh, Great group to be part of. It's wonderful, and I
I,
mean, there's always something fun to watch, to watch, to see, to talk about.
and I think we are the only sci-fi there, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Honored.
Oh yes, we are like the pioneers in sci-fi.
I, I will love sub. You know.
And starting with our shout outs, I want to say thank you to Sun and Shadows, Suns and Shadows cast. Their handle is Suns and Shadows in Twitter. Love your tweets and posts, and appreciate always the retweets and the support. Thank you so much. We hope that you enjoy this episode and you enjoy all the other ones that we create. We love doing this for all our listeners. Also to Captain Funnest Frontier, and his handle, which Robert probably gonna love, is Dex Lower, the best division of Star Trek, right?
Yes.
the,
Lower decks.
the heroes that nobody ever sees. Thank you so much, man. Too, we do appreciate it, and we hope that you continue to enjoy our content. Open Pike at Open Pike is actually their handle. Love their episodes all the time. They are
Yes.
fantastic, and love being part of the Discord server too. I'm so excited that they actually create a Discord server because I mean I think it's one of the best tools to actually interact live and directly with the people that make the content that you love. You know.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that if you don't, if you are not already a member of the Discord channel and you love Star Trek, what are you waiting for?
Yeah. I mean, they can start with the lower decks, right? That series is fun, and I mean, it'll get you definitely into Star Trek. Also, I wanted to give you a special thank you. This person has been a very big supporter of us from the beginning, and we appreciate having her with us in previous episodes. Hope to have future episodes with her too. Is the Manic Pixie Weirdo. Love her podcast, love her content, and love her all around. She's a fantastic person. Have fun with the episode that we have with her. Hope to have all
Yes.
others. And I always enjoy just joining her on spaces and having fantastic conversations on Twitter. And last but not least, one of the most fun people that we've been interacting with now in our server and on Twitter, Sleepy Captain Kyoshi, and her handle is KyoCat2468. love her content, love also like driving her crazy away, playing stupid all the time, you know. But I mean, it's lots of fun always with her. I really enjoy the chat with her all the time and just picking at her and teasing her.
Heavily on Discord. And you know, it takes a special person to deal with Captain Chaos. So, you know,
Oh
come
yeah.
on. Awesome.
Reap the whirlwind.
Okay, so should we go into the outer remnants?
Yep.
The outer remnant.
What do you mean go into the outer rim and I live there? Oh dear. So what have we been outer remnanting this week? Well, of course, I have my regular outer remnant. Did you guys do anything special?
No, we have a couple of things that are coming, but nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Oh, okay. So it's all on its way.
Yes.
Seems fair. Let me just pull something up here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, Geo was going to be on.
Yeah, by the time I saw the notification, because I was putting Christmas lights in the house. Seriously, fun stuff. And it's not like it's snowing or cold in here, so it was not that fun.
Yeah, we'd have to we have to apologize to Creek Indian, Creaky, because yeah, we could have, but we got distracted with Christmas lights.
Oh dear, and it's not even December yet. Getting close though. We've only got a couple of days. So Rory, you wouldn't realize this, but Science Fiction Remnant is a very close ally of the Alita Army. I don't know if you've seen the movie Alita Battle Angel.
I have, yeah. That's James Cameron, isn't it?
Yep. Well, Robert Rodriguez, but James Cameron was behind it all.
Behind it, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think?
I thought it was stunning. I thought the VFX were incredible. It was something. I mean, yeah, I liked it. I mean, I had quite strong opinions about James Cameron, so I don't know that's necessarily even though he's my hero, but it's also I feel like he's been making the same movie his entire life. So
conflicting feelings.
Well, I guess we'll find out in about 3 weeks.
Avatar, the Shape of Water, the Life of Water, or something. It's like what? Okay. More water.
The Way of Water. Yeah, he loves his underwater filming, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But Alita Battle Angel was actually made as a Robert Rodriguez movie in the form of a James Cameron movie. So he was trying to do his impression of a James Cameron movie, but I think it worked reasonably well.
Yeah, it's great. It's stunning.
I'll blow your mind. Did you realize that Alita's hair is fully digital?
Really? Jesus.
Really. All the clothes, all the hair,
wow.
Everything. Fully digital. Yeah, I was like, what? I thought that shit was real. It's not a case of...
You imagine the hairdresser every time for filming? She would have ate her job.
Just do it up the bun and leave it to post. It's not a case of requiring getting over the uncanny valley. They paved over that sucker, so you couldn't even find the uncanny valley.
Oh yes.
But yeah, so I'm actually one of the hosts of the Alita Army Radio Chaos live stream. We stream every Saturday afternoon, Eastern US. And this week we were talking about the good, the bad, and the Battle Angel 10 years in the Badlands. So
there's no
what
ugly?
That means...
There's no ugly?
No, there's no ugly. There's only a Battle Angel.
Come on, man.
She's got the blue. Come on.
So even Nova is good or bad only? No ugly? Nobody's
well,
ugly.
he's ugly, but he doesn't show up until a bit later. See, in the manga, and this is a big spoiler, so if you can go la 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 for about a minute if you don't want to know. But there's an arc in the manga called the Badlands arc, and at the start of that, Alita spends 10 years wandering around the Badlands looking for information on where Destinova has gotten to, because she's hunting him down for Tafari /Zalem. because she's become one of their agents. And there's also other stuff going on, but it's not directly related. But there's a 10-year time jump. And in that 10 years, there's only one side story that Kyoshii ever wrote. So we were sort of wondering what sort of stories could be told in a cybernetic cowboy, sort of Wild West-esque kind of setup. And I pulled up a website about the 7 major sort of tropey stories that are told in Westerns, and we went through how that could work in the Badlands, and it went pretty well. We had a lot of fun with that. So that's what we were talking about. Just actually, it was just yesterday for me. So yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Awesome. So, are we ready?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was really ready.
Look, man, imagine that our segments were the days of the week, and this is the 6th day. This is right before God's gonna rest. And I have interesting thoughts and doubts about it that I want to actually pick our guest brain on it for sure.
So before we get into it, Ray, I don't know if you want to read the plot. This one is really short. For typically our plots are a lot longer.
But no Chinese.
I wonder if I should. Should I run it through Google Translate a few times first?
If we could replicate that, oh my freaking god!
I'll give myself the homework, man. This is gonna be a segment, the Chinese translation plots.
Or should we let Regio do his Captain Chaos plot and then have the real plot after?
We can try. Are you
I'd be interested.
Are you ready, Rory?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this comic was fantastic, and I mean, it's a fun story about 2 people that do too much DMT. Basically, that should be done in little quantities, and they just start just buggering off and stuff like that. They beat the shit out of each other, and they don't remember crap because they burn their own brains, and they're just hanging naked on a national park. And basically, one thing led to another, and then the guy ended up with another woman that he thought it was the first woman. And basically, they're looking for this machine, but what they're really looking is for the car to get the heck out of there. And by the end of it, there's actually an encounter with the first girlfriend, and it's no nice.
Ray, were we reading the same comic?
Perhaps there was a haze of cannabis smoke there that we were lacking.
Oh man, this was like psychoactive crazy shit going on, man. These people thought that they were being in the creation and stuff. They were gods.
He's into 3 of our acronyms this week. It's LSD and PCP.
Oh god. Oh, that's Captain Chaos for you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I followed it perfectly.
Well, I'm glad. That makes one of us.
I think Captain Chaos got Rody some ideas to write the next comic.
You're welcome, man.
You see, Gio's the only person in human history who actually understood that 10-minute psychedelic section in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, we all walked out going, "What the hell was that?" And Gio went, "Yeah, I get it. Yeah, right, I understand. Yep."
The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, man. You gotta see it for yourself to understand it. Look at the waves.
Oh wow!
As long as he's happy, just. So, would you like a plot that makes a little more sense now?
Yes.
All right. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to read it? Rory's saying you wrote it.
Yeah, I could read it. I mean, this is actually I didn't. This is just a synopsis, really. It's not really like a beat breakdown of the story.
Oh well, no, that's fine.
That's fine.
Well, it's yours. I think you should read it personally.
Okay, I'll do it. It's have you ever wondered how we will leave our solar system and colonize distant worlds? The scientists who discovered DNA found out how in 1974. Arks is the story of two planetary engineers, Joseph and Lilith, who are booted by bacteria onto a terraformed planet orbiting a distant star. To their horror, they discover that the process may have accidentally turned the entire planet into a bomb. As the last surviving humans, Arks, they have a terrible decision to make. Do they try and survive in this brutal world, or do they do the unthinkable and euthanize the species? So that's the synopsis.
When you say last surviving humans, is that like on that planet or everywhere?
Well, because of the time spans involved with sending these rafts out, the Fermi paradox sort of comes into play. So the chances that by the time they get there that we're still here is actually quite small, because chances are we would have wiped ourselves out or done something else. So they go to these planets knowing full well that they might be the last people alive. So and then it's kind of all about how they reconnect with each other.
Rory, have you
they
watched?
don't really go to the planets. The copies of them are produced on the planets.
Yes.
So
yeah, but they've had a sense that they are the people that they were kind of based on, and then I think it kind of introduces some quite interesting kind of metaphysical ideas of who we are.
Parallel universe.
Yeah. And the thing about the conceit of the story is it does allow, normally when you make a film or a comic or a book about time travel, it's always pretty far-fetched. But when you start talking about relativistic travel and that these planets kind of connecting with each other, this story actually allows for kind of a weird kind of time travel, because they can connect with each other over these huge distances. So by the time they get there, they are literally thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years in the future. So it's kind of it's quite a bit of a Alice, bit of a rabbit hole idea.
Yep. I was going to ask you if you watched Interstellar, because it touches a lot of like relativity laws that are played and toggled with in that movie. And it's true, like besides the Earth, like all the other rafts, like they don't know if they made it, if they were successful, or if it was better or worse a scenario played on there compared to what happened on this exoplanet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like things like when you can travel at luminal speeds, like if you can travel at like time stops. So if you can travel at the speed of light, basically time stands still for you, but for anyone watching it, hundreds of years pass if they are watching you. So there's so many just
it's just like looking at a star and not knowing if it's still there or it's just light still traveling towards us, and that's gone a long time ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're not far from us, actually. They're nearby Libra.
Tau Ceti, 11 light years away, so it's fairly close.
Fairly close compared to like the size of the observing, like what we know of what can be seen on the
observable
galaxy.
universe.
One of the things that I like about this comic is the fact that it makes me think inwards and outwards, and this two ways that we have spoke in different episodes in our between season 1 and season 2, where what is what is us, when you are copying someone into a different body, it's still us. And the other thing that we have talked in previous episodes, which made me really think when I read this comic, is the fact that I always think of time and space as a single thing. And and the conversation that we just talked about, how when you travel through space, you're also traveling through time, and there's no way that you cannot do that, because time and space is one thing. So it's insane that if we want to go far into a distinct location, we also have to go far into the future, because we can only travel in one way.
Yeah, we can only go forward on it. Let me ask you.
Go ahead.
You can finish the thought, Rory.
I was just going to say, because you have a really good point. When these people are looking up at the stars, we're seeing the light as it was. Well, they in their particular scenario, they're seeing the light as it was 11 million light years ago.
I know, it's incredible. Like when they the James Webb telescope at the moment, it's taking all these radio images of like the galaxies that are the furthest away from us. So because they're the furthest away from us, they are naturally like the earliest galaxies that emerged from the Big Bang. So when they look back at them, they're essentially going back to the beginning of time, because that light has taken billions of years to travel and reach us. So it's
logically speaking, like anything that we can observe in our sky was here before us, because if not, we wouldn't be able to see it still.
It is wild to me that we are looking at a star at night that might not be there. It's just
most people
insane.
don't even realize that the sunlight that they're receiving is 8 minutes old. Most people don't even realize that. Like if the sun blows up, we won't know until 8 minutes that we're screwed.
the piece of 8 minutes. 8:01 crap.
Man, by that time I will be like, okay, bye. There's nothing you can do. But I have a question that actually was not played out in the comic, just to know your thoughts, like the metaphysical aspect of it. Like I always wonder about this thing. We talk about this when we're talking about other forms of us humans replicating ourselves into other bodies to try to cheat death and things like that. Like these are biological, printed by the cradle bodies, but like, does this means that these people have a soul or like some metaphysical entity being a copy or not? Like I was like, that's very interesting to think about it now that they're actually a biological form of life. And I mean, I found it fascinating how it starts, because basically they are trying to escape themselves from their primal instincts to come back into their consciousness state.
Yeah.
And I mean, I found it just fascinating.
Yeah, me too. One of the things that when you work, because obviously I've never made anything really before. This is the first thing I've made. So the range of reactions you get to it when people actually like read it and feedback to you. And one of the things I found really fascinating is that some people kind of can't accept the premise of the story because it's not a person actually physically traveling. It's like some kind of technology, biological technology, like recreating a human being. So they're like, it's almost like by doing this, we're sort of breaking the link with us on Earth, because we're using a bodge or a cheat to get there almost. So some people are like almost can't accept the story because they don't accept the premise, because they can't get their head around the idea that we're not going to go.
Yeah.
Even though that, that they've already been able to do, make bespoke life forms in a lab. And, so if they can make life like in a lab now, then, ergo 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they'll probably be able to do it at scale. And then it's like, well, at what point? I don't know. So it's all very interesting. And these aren't things that I necessarily even thought about too much when I was actually working on it. It was more people's reactions to it. That it's
And I mean, honestly, when you think about it, it's that primal self-preservation instinct that we have as human beings. That even if I send my biological bacterial copy, it's like it's not me. It's that distraction of the self that let us not think collectively as it's humans actually making it out there. And there's what I find the wisdom on spirituality too, saying like we're just one living in many different perspectives, different realities, but we're one whole. So like and that feeling can be actually translated when you see actually a NASA launch, like when you saw, for example, in 1969 the rocket launch to the moon. It gives you that wholesome feeling like we humans are making it out there. And that's what I felt when I was reading that too and thinking about like the possibilities of the future. It's like, yeah, it's the same feeling. It helps us reach that collective thinking of all of us, instead of being individuals, being one whole one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It also, that makes me think about, this is another subject that we have talked about in the past, previous episodes, where, you're making, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but kind of making a copy of yourself.
Yeah.
So how does that feel? Like, even if the original person dies, like,
It's
say for
ego
example,
boosting, man. That's ego boosting. It's like, I'm
Well,
immortal.
well, think about this for a minute. The original person. Let's paint two separate scenarios. The original person dies, and they make a copy after. And second scenario is they just make a copy of the person, and this person, let's say the person is like 90 years old, right? And is it how does the original person feels on the last case where they made a copy when they were alive? And even when they're dead, is it the original person? I'm sure the copy feels that way. And this is something that I was just thinking at the beginning of this comic, when they basically came to life. What is your thought on that, Gio and Ray?
Well, I think that Rory did a stellar job there, because the state of mind and consciousness in which the subjects were processed, they were already conscious of who they were going to be. So when Joseph and Lilith actually gain their consciousness, they don't have that individualism into them. They understand what they are, and they fully are accepting of that reality. They don't they are beyond that block that allows them to actually function. So like when you see them talking, they are talking fully aware, like, I'm a copy of that original person, and I am the commissioner on this mission, and it helps them actually endure better and perform better their tasks, because they are not distracted by all these things that are really not helpful to looking forward to what they need to do. One thing, I have an idea for you, Rory, since you said that you didn't thought about it. I think I have mentioned this in many other episodes, but I think that what's going to play scientifically on that metaphysical aspect is going to be quantum technology. I think that we're in the cradle of birth of quantum technology right now. We don't know absolutely jack shit about it, but I think that that's what's going to actually reveal the science behind the soul too. And I think that will be a great premise too. So like if you ever think of it, that's going to be scientifically like the perfect playbook to actually try that out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. One of the things, when I was researching this, I started talking to a friend who's a physicist, and he said, and I started talking about these rafts, like traveling between planets, and like the time scales. Like some of these rafts would be in space for hundreds of thousands of years, if not if not millions. And he said, well, what about the Turing paradox? How was that? Well, then I'd never heard of the Turing paradox. And basically there's a theory at the quantum level that because, like quantum entanglement, like it's all about having observers. So by looking at something, you change it by looking at it. And so there's a serious theory in physics, which is that an object with no observer over a long enough period of time would start to become radioactive and would decay and would disappear, because there would be no conscious observer to break down the wave function or something or other. So I was just like, so in the story, which is obviously not actually in the comic yet, but it's all in the appendix and in the future issues, is that these rafts have to stop at intermittent periods on their journey there to wait for the bacteria to wake up and interact with each other, because if they don't, the whole thing may collapse and disappear because of all this
it could be detrimental for the preservation process of it.
Yeah.
And this kind of plays out when we watch a Space Odyssey. It kind of plays. They also like play out this theory too, because I mean, if you think about it, if you have a machine that is fully able, like the raft, to completely do the whole homework of getting you from point A to point B, why would the passengers will have to wake up in the middle of it? But it's because of that. Look, I think that if that wouldn't have being done, probably when they get to the planet, they will stay like primal animals and not being able to gain consciousness at all. You know, or start forgetting things because even though we're bacteria, there's a limited space of data that you can actually put in. It's like the premise behind what if we're immortals? Like you're not gonna remember when you were born when you're 300 years because your mind is not made to store all of that information in your long-term memory, much less in your short-term memory.
Yeah.
You know.
I think I read somewhere that they believe that the longest a human mind could stay intact is about 300 years.
Yep.
I think after 300 years, it would all just break down because the structures couldn't maintain themselves anymore.
Wow.
Of course, we haven't tested that yet because we haven't managed to keep a person alive that long. But that's what they expect.
Well, I mean, biblically speaking, I wonder what Methuselah in the Bible was able to actually figure out to think about because he was supposed to be 900 years.
Well, I like
he's
to
like
think
enlightened, so he's just nothing and nobody.
I like to think the composition of the planet was a lot different back then. You know, the air mixture, the ground, the you know, just everything overall.
There was a lot less metal toxins about the place, certainly.
Yeah, definitely.
And petrochemical toxins.
It makes you wonder, you know, how would that feel? It makes you almost feel as if we are able to travel back in time, would that atmosphere be toxic to us? Because we are born in a complete different, you know, atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, it's something in the later episode is that, you know, the oxygen like, you know, rusts metal. It's a poison. It's a byproduct. It's a life byproduct. So in the story as it develops, it's like more about the fact that we always have this kind of thing in science fiction, which is if a planet's got oxygen, it's good. And it's actually not. It has to be exactly the right amount of oxygen and nitrogen and argon and a million other things. If you get too much or too little, then it becomes pretty dicey. So,
Well, if you look at the history of insects on Earth, there was a time when we had mega insects, and that was when the oxygen levels were much higher than they are today. And of course, because insects don't have a circulatory system, they don't have lungs and breathe in air and then put it into a blood, like link it to red blood cells and move it around the body. So they gather oxygen through osmosis, which is just it moving from higher concentration to lower concentration. So if you have a lot more oxygen, you can have a bigger insect. But insects are limited in the size that they can become today because of the current concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere. So if you have more oxygen, you get big bastard insects. And I did notice that the mosquitoes that they were seeing were like, you know.
They're like Florida mosquitoes.
I didn't want to go.
Florida mosquitoes.
We have those mosquitoes
I'm waiting for them to rope and ride centipedes because those bastards can get big already. We get centipedes down here in Australia. I've seen them this big.
Oh wow!
So you know, if the oxygen level was higher, you know, you could rope them and ride them.
Yeah. Oh wow!
And they'd probably cut you in half with their mandibles. But anyway.
Yeah, it's the same with like the reason the dinosaurs were bigger was because the oxygen was thicker back in the Cretaceous and the Jurassic. They were allowed to get that big.
However, if you have a dry forest, it will catch fire a whole lot easier and there's a lot more oxygen. I used to play a game called Sim Earth. This was way back when you know computer games were fairly simple, but it did have a mechanism where you know you were trying to get a planet. You were trying to get the environment on the planet right for life to form, and it was tricky. And I always used to end up with too much oxygen and have global forest fires. Crap, not again. Whole bloody planet went poof.
Hey, you should love what is called Universe Sandbox. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, my son has that. He loves it.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So
it's fire that thing up and you can.
I think it's funny that you guys mentioned that because I mean I watch a lot of like documentaries about dinosaurs and things like that. I've never heard anybody talking or playing this very very fundamental theory or fact about maybe that's why actually they got exterminated with a meteorite because that meteorite is not probably what hurt the Earth. If not, we would have even been displaced or shattered. but the oxygen levels back then make that explosion be a nuclear warhead that just toasted everything on the Earth.
Yeah.
There were apparently, well, according to certain researchers, they did believe that there was massive fires after that impact.
Yeah. And
but,
I mean, that's why
it's also
life
thought
on
that
the
it wasn't.
water was what evolved into what we know all now as life forms now. It's because probably the things on the deepest pits of the oceans were what came back to life from the crustaceous area, the crustacean area, all the way to what we are now.
It was a large percentage up in the 90s somewhere of life that got killed, but obviously the bigger you were, the sooner you would die because you don't have the
shelter of
any kind. You don't have the requirements you need because you need more of them because you're bigger. So the smaller things were the things that survived, and there were actually mammals around at that time, they believe, but they were only tiny little shrewy things that were, just hiding from all the massive dinosaurs stomping around, and they survived because they were so small. They didn't require a lot of upkeep. And when the environment is completely disrupted like that, and you have very low amounts of resources, like biological resources available, only the little things survive, or the things that could fly away, like the pterodactyls and the flying dinosaurs, which are now birds. We have lots of different species of birds visit our balcony every day, and I watch. We have this this brush turkey called Daddy Turkey. That's what my family calls him. He comes and visits us several times a day for food. And you watch him chase the other birds off. It's a dinosaur. It's just running back and forth up and down the balcony. It's got massive claws, and I'm just freaking hell. That's where the dinosaurs went.
I have to mention. I have to mention this because when me and Gio started reading this comic, we read this a couple of times. I would have to say, it's every page is filled somehow with science.
Oh
yeah. Which I really appreciate. And as a matter of fact, when I did the final read prior to this episode, I actually sent Rory. I sent you a message on Twitter saying that I just finished reading this, and I'm still processing. And Gio, I remember the very first time that we did the read, I was slightly confused, and it's because you need to get to the end or close enough to the end to actually understand. Gio was really confused. So we had to have a couple of times.
You made me more confused because I even told you, like, this Lilith in the beginning, which is actually, I wanted to ask you, Rory, like, did you draw the name of Lilith out of pagan mythology by any chance?
Yeah, well, there's apocryphal. I think it's apocryphal, but it was the Alphabet of Ben Sirach, which was an early Jewish apocryphal tome that didn't make it into any of the Torahs or anything else. There was a whole section about Lilith, and it kind of took on the whole trend, especially in like the fairly recent past, like in the 1800s and 1900s. The idea of Lilith being this like rebellious woman who wouldn't put up with Adam's shit. So when I was in the process of doing it, I was like, there were so many parallels with the actual kind of like the research I had. I was like, it'd be kind of crazy to not do it. And then the more I looked into it, I was just like, no, I've got to keep this. So I'm obviously playing with like some religious ideas in it, and it's all, I'm not going to tell you why, because obviously I haven't finished the story yet. But I haven't finished.
I knew it. I told Robert. He's like, no, you gotta have to the end. And then I'm telling Robert, like, this thing about Lilith rebelling and everything, there's a catch-22 here. And he's like, no, you're gonna see. And then he tried to dissuade me when Eve or second Lilith comes in, like, there she is, and he keeps on calling her Lilith. So like, he just got me like, okay, all right. And I'm like in my head like, no.
I can give you a kind of it's a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler in that because obviously I haven't got to this. It comes out in issue 4 and 5. And also I'm going to be making another comic, which is like a parallel comic to this, which is about another set of arcs.
Oh, nice.
So basically, the conceit of the actual story, the super story that it's going to be based on, is that they connect back with Earth, and Earth is sending a signal to their planet, and the signal is just telling them, instructing them to boot a girl, and there's no other information in there. It's just this girl. So in the future episodes, they start to realize that someone's come through. They've actually booted someone up from Earth, and that person, without totally ruining it, she sort of becomes the sort of the thrust of the story moving forward. The comic, as it is, the volume 1, it's really just the it's the setup for everything that's going to happen. In the future.
Man, but it's artfully and just incredibly intellectually made and crafted. Because when you look at it, it's just seem like, damn, maybe like I like to read a lot about ancient advanced civilizations, the Anunnakis and all those extraterrestrial beings that actually show them how to read and how to make these pyramids and things like that. And it's like, it's easy to translate this. So this was the Ark. This was Joseph. And this is the tree of life, and then you're like, maybe that's what's going to happen in that exoplanet in 2 billion years too. It's going to be some fabulous story about something that they think is not real because evolution has taken us to forget our roots.
No, it's all quite spooky. Like I had loads of research. Like I was just collecting, like copying and pasting URLs and paragraphs that I, for years, not necessarily knowing what I was going to do with it. But then I read, there's a very famous genomic scientist called Craig Venter. He's sort of one of the pioneers of the Genome Project, and he's also one of the not Frankenstein, but he's one of the people that's creating these like biological life forms. And his autobiography was called Life at the Speed of Light, and his idea was that we would send like a von Neumann probe. So basically send a probe to a planet, it would land there, and then we would be able to network with that thing and send information to that machine to make it. And I had already kind of had this idea of a pit, like in the story, it's just basically this well full of bacteria. But and all of just the parallels with this idea, you have to make a machine, and that machine, like, I mean, I know you guys like Space Odyssey and 2001, and the obelisk at the end is kind of like, I've read stuff about Space Odyssey where they say that that's like to do with direct panspermia and stuff like that. And I was like, so anyway, sorry, geeking out a bit, but yeah.
It's still our #1 most downloaded episode, by the way.
Oh, yep. Cool. Yeah.
So we have to bring it up in every episode somehow. So we're probably going to tick that box.
Well, it kind of comes out. I don't know. I mean, I guess we loved it.
Oh
yeah. No, it's great. It's so good.
Rory, can I just get a clarification from you? When you say that they're supposed to boot this woman, is her genome within what they took with them, or is it sent digitally to them?
It's sent digitally, so they connect. They reconnect. The idea is it's actually in one of the appendix pages right at the back. This Lanikia network thing is that the idea is that we'll never be able to travel between planets, but we can network planets. So the idea is that we can send information with ultraviolet or laser or anything else. So we can send information to each other. So we could send you the information to make a person, and then that person gets booted up on the other side. They walk around, they fact find, and then they kind of, compress their memories somehow and then send them back. And then they boot that person up and then you talk. So it's like this kind of lighthouse messenger in a bottle thing where we can communicate by sending people on beams of light across the galaxy. The idea is when they come back, when they find Earth and they get the signal, it's just telling them to boot a girl, and there's no context. And naturally they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then all hell breaks loose. So yeah, it's
gotta love that.
Yeah.
They never introduce a third person into a functional two-person dynamic. It's not a good. Hang on, didn't we do that with science fiction?
Yeah.
I wonder. Another thing that I have to mention is something that came up the very first time that me and Gio read this story. The mucus.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
And the award for a story that has the most mucus and other bodily fluids goes to Arks.
It was freaking brilliant, man.
So
I love the way
People
Lilith vomited and then
really
just
hate it.
ignored
Like,
the
some
fact
people
that she
are like-
just Ralph.
It's something that I have to mention because you know, I haven't had time to actually Google this. So the is this truly a reaction of the human body to over oxygenated atmosphere, or is that
Well,
something
so
else?
basically it's based on compression sickness, which you can get obviously if you dive deep and you've got too much pressure on your lungs, and then the alveoli in the lungs collapse, and then they warp mucus forms on them, and then basically you kind of. So if you're in a planet that's got like, so Tau Ceti is like, they're obviously not sure yet because they haven't actually been able to image it fully, but they know it's probably about twice the size of Earth, so it's like twice the gravity.
Ooh.
So if you're in a double gravity environment, then you know, my thinking was, well, you're in a double gravity environment that's got very thick oxygen, you're probably going to get something like compression sickness or the bends or something. So and originally I was like, it was when I was trying to stitch the whole thing together, it was kind of a problem because I was like, well, they wouldn't be able to survive. It would be, the oxygen would kill them straight away. And then I realized
If it was
that kind
double
of
gravity, the gravity would probably screw them up as well. They'd have trouble moving.
Of course. Yeah. So there's, but then there's a few bits of artistic. Obviously, in the course of the story, the idea is that it kind of reveals why the gravity isn't killing them in the way that they think it is as well.
Yeah, because I was.
No, you can go, Robert.
Yeah, I was just gonna say because you know, aside from like trying to search to see if they have liquid in their stomachs, as a way to determine if the experiment failed.
Lungs,
not stomachs, lungs. I always find it interesting because I was a little confused. You know, I knew it was illustrated in this comic that it is a bigger planet. But there's a scene when she sneezes and she jumped back like if it was in a smaller planet. So that actually, I guess it confused me a little.
Right.
As to what was going on.
Well, the idea is in double gravity, if you sneeze in double gravity, it's probably going to break your neck. And so the theory, I mean, the idea because obviously this was originally written in the script, and one of the huge challenges with this for me has been there's a saying in screenwriting which you should never be on the nose. You should never say exactly what a person is wanting and thinking. You should always be a bit artful about it. But with comic books, it's kind of different. You know, if you're not on the nose with a comic book, you end up with a 900-page comic book that no one wants to read. So you have to be a bit more on the nose. So when I was writing that scene, the idea is that she sort of slips and the sneeze makes her fall over and slip. And the slipping probably stops her from breaking her neck, kind of thing. But but you can't. It's kind of, that's a hard thing. Like doing actual real physicality in a comic book's actually quite hard. So yeah.
I would think that the animals that were chasing them were probably breaking their necks, trying to leap up the trees at them and stuff like that.
But I think that's what artfully was done too, because just with that display, when they're looking at the wolves and they are actually not wolves, they are slightly evolved. I already assumed that their exoskeletal structure too was printed according to the conditions of the planet. So they are not really equally biologically made as humans. They were made from the cookie cutter of a human being. But if I'm not mistaken, too, this bacteria is like a blank slate where it's going to be burned into the data that was sent.
Yeah.
And basically, the cradle is absorbing and assimilating the whole surrounding and the environment. So when they got created, even though they were made on a body for being on this specific planet, that signature is what differs and makes them not completely adapted to the environment. If you look at it somehow.
Exactly. Like, you know, like we were talking earlier on about oxygen and dinosaurs. Like in Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs are the same size, but like surely one of the story holes in Jurassic Park would be is if you could actually make a dinosaur, would it even be able to stand up? Considering like it was on a, you know, had so much more oxygen. It was, you know. So
would it be able to keep on living on or actually asphyxiating? because they don't have that much oxygen on the atmosphere now, or in the air. It's not so dense.
But they filled up the holes with frog DNA, so that fixed
frog
it.
DNA. Yeah. I forgot about frog DNA.
Gotta love that frog DNA. I think I'll get some for myself. Fix a few holes.
I'm doing I am using the life finds a way thing a little bit with this, in that, like, when you actually start really thinking about the oxygen and the pressure and everything else, and suddenly it all just becomes so complicated. It's like, so there is a kind of life finds a way element to this, in that they've obviously, and also there are some things that come out in the later issues which explains why they're in the situation they're in. So and why everything's alive when it should be dead, kind of thing.
Yeah, I find
life finds always a good one.
Yeah,
it's great. It's fun, brilliant.
It suggested that human beings on a heavier gravity planet would obviously be shorter. Their spinal columns would be thicker to be able to support their bodies. They'd have larger musculature, probably bigger lungs, because they'd need more oxygen for all that muscle. So the human body is expected to change quite significantly, dependent on the gravity of the planet and the thickness of the atmosphere and all those sorts of things, if they can survive at all. So
yeah.
And of course, Lilith had anti-gravity boobs, because in double atmosphere she should have boobs stretching down to her navel, at the very least. But they were anti-gravity boobs, so that was handy.
And
look forward to that, ladies.
What DNA?
I mean, she being a signature from an 84-year-old lady probably would have been like belly button length.
But they didn't have. Well, at least I don't think so. They had any frog DNA.
No, I mean,
well, no, they did, because
Spider-Man, the reptile Spider-Man stuff,
because all the well preserved genetic elements were all collected together. It was only the variations between species that were separated so that they could get it all into the genome of the bacteria, as Rory was saying in the pre-show. So yeah, there probably was some frog DNA and a whole bunch of other things in there as well, but functionally the same as what is in a human.
And I mean, I really love like how they speak all around completely. They are always scientifically oriented about their whole consciousness and self-awareness, and I found that impressive. Like when she gained consciousness and she's talking to him, they're talking about analog inputs and basically keeping track of what's happening. Like they are actually typing or putting inputs in a machine there, and you're like, this looks like two monkeys just walking around naked on the jungle, and then when they bring the AI live, I'm like, whoa, okay.
Joe was riding his arm, and he lost half of his research because of that wolf attack.
Yeah. It's
that's one thing that I have to say about the illustrations. They're very, what's the word? They're number one. Number
moist
one
would be a good word.
I had to mention first, they're beautiful, right?
Oh yeah.
I have to mention that first. I find them, like you said, moist, very graphic in a way, which typically, and Gio might know a little bit more about this firsthand. I typically don't like, I don't want to say gory. Can I say gory? I don't know that I can go all the way down there, but
I would go down to the gooey or yucky line of descriptive verbs.
So the reason why I'm saying this is because I typically don't like that kind of style, and this works.
Oh, thank you.
And I personally like it, and it's just beautifully done.
Thank you.
What he actually shows you, it's kind of hard for me to explain. Gio, you know where I'm going with this, right? Because you know my taste firsthand. Is he frozen?
I'm properly pedantic about, I like to see dirt under fingernails and stuff like that. I get quite bothered when I watch a film and stuff, and people have got you know, the hair's not moving, and it just drives me crazy. I mean, I'm definitely being a bit of a kook, but I kind of wanted it to be, you know, their experience there would be awful. I mean, it would be horrible. I mean, if it's hard to capture it in a comic book, but like they would have headaches, they would be ill, they would be nauseous, everything would be going wrong simultaneously. So if you try and make it look like, you know, aesthetically beautiful and clean, then I think it would be wrong. And to be honest, if I'd had my way, it would have been worse. It would have been even worse. But it was just because it's just like drawing mud and blood on. So it's not just you're just doing the line work and you're doing the color. I drive Andrew, the artist, absolutely crazy because I'm like, yeah, can you just make it a bit muddier and a bit bloodier, and then
don't forget it. Everything has to be covered in goo.
He hates it so much.
It was just beautifully done, and I wanted to get Gio's comment on it because I think out of all of us, he knows my taste a lot more.
Yeah.
What do you think about what I just said?
As an artist myself, I like drawing and painting and stuff like that. When I was reading and watching, I was like, this shit must have been fucking difficult to do because, like, when I'm painting or drawing something, the mucus, the goo, the orange goo all over the place, how things were sticky to them, it's like these are difficult elements to actually portray perfectly and beautifully in anything you're doing. Yeah. You know, and it makes it more artful. You know,
it does. It doesn't make it easier for me or for the poor artist Andrew, but it's one of those things that I just I kind of.
Like it was paramount. It was paramount for the main plot too, I think.
Yeah, it's important for the story. Like it's like, you know, one of the things I don't like about science fiction, one of my own critiques of the story personally, is that science fictions have always got big asses, you know, because you've got so much information to like give a reader or an audience to get to put them in the reality of the world. So when you're doing like an issue one, you know, your first couple of issues or your first episode, you've got to do this huge info dump on people. And you've got to start foreshadowing everything that's going to happen later on, even though, like, to the people reading it, they're like, why is everyone's nose running? You know, they don't get it. But then when you find out later on, it's because they're literally drowning in the air. It makes sense.
I mean, Arks is full of epiphanies. I can tell you that. Like, every time that you discover something, it's like, oh, you know, that's one of the things that I love the most. It's like, it has a perfect combination of hooking the reader and then just like giving them aha moments constantly.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. It's actually, I haven't like, you know, finishing a comic book. It's like, well, I'm sure it's the same when finishing a novel or anything else. Is you work really hard and then you finish it and you send it out, and there's a kind of weird silence when you finish your work because you get people say, "Oh, it's great, I love it," or, you know, they give you some constructive feedback or anything else. So I think this is literally the first time I've ever actually talked to anyone about the story in this detail, because I've done some like few Twitter interviews and stuff, but it's all kind of top level. So it's great to talk about it. It's amazing.
Oh, these guys will dig down so deep that they'll find, you know, magma. So how long have you got?
I have heard that before. I think we bring a new definition to deep dive.
Yes.
Well, not in the oceans of this new planet, man. Or I mean, the only thing you can do with this ocean is to grab some cups and put it to salty stuff, you know, and good salads. and I mean, I wonder because like when they played that premise too, like they killed everything that was in the planet. I wonder, like, the most ancient forms of lives on any planet are on the oceans. That's what's more prone to survive. But in here, it seems they kill everything. It seems. I am not fully sure, or I would not bank on that fact that they might have.
No, 100%.
Some things I would think could have mutated. I mean, there's algae in it. So if that's a organic form of life too, even though it's fauna. So I will venture to say there are some animals that just got uglier down there that they just have not seen. You know?
Yeah, no. I mean, like in the reality of the story, this bacteria would be sterilizing. If you send it to a planet, because this bacteria is so robust. It's basically an extremophile. It can survive any kind of change in temperature or anything else. It would kill anything there. And there is a whole sub branch of ethics called panbiotic ethics, which is that, you know, we shouldn't go to Mars because we might take some microbes there that might end X and Y. So there's a really big ethical thing. Like, you know, if we're not just in the story, like we're not just sending bacteria, we're sterilizing planets to make them suitable for us. So the reason in the story Joe is like, we have to stop this, is because he's like, it's not working. It's done. We're done. You know, we've had our chance. It's not going to work out. But again, that's not something that's really necessarily kind of gone into in science fiction. People sort of just land on planets and they walk around and they get a vibe and something happens. Whereas just even stepping foot on a planet, you do damage to it. So yeah.
I find that very fascinating because you know, they go into this planet. They had no idea. Well, I like to think they had no idea of what type of life was there already, but they just destroyed it by going there.
Yeah.
Whatever was on this planet, you know, it could have been a wonderful form of life. They would never know. They do have a sense that they destroyed whatever was there because they are scientists after all. But I find that really interesting because that would be something that nowadays all scientists actually go a great length to try to prevent.
Yeah.
And here is just, well, obviously the circumstances are completely different, but it's kind of like I just find it very interesting that the contrast and the idea.
I wanted to ask Rory because he also remind me a lot of a show on Netflix that I've watched many times. It's called Alien Worlds.
Okay.
I don't know if you watch it.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I like
exactly. It. And when they talk about what this planet could have been and like the mistakes of having way too much oxygen and things like that, I was like, it makes so much sense, you know. Like they show in the show like planets that have air so dense that birds actually glide and swim in the air.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's artfully made. And I'm like right now, like I finished Volume 1 and ponder so much about it, but I'm wondering what's going to happen. Like, what's the actual rotation, like translation of the planet around its star? What's the axis movement on it? What's going to be when it happens winters? Because they cannot hit shit. It's going to get interesting. It's like it's a time bomb. No, I'm wondering what's
you're
going to
light a fire, Gio. That'll sort everything out. Everything will be really warm.
No, it's going to become California. You know,
for the rest of their lives, which won't be very long.
So I'm wondering, like it seems like they're in some kind of nearby equatorial line in the planet, because I mean the beach looks kind of tropically looking, but it makes me wonder. I mean, it brought me a lot of things from a show I'm caught up with, Raised by Wolves, which is actually them trying to bring back up humans in a new planet that they cannot control all these factors. And it makes me wonder, like, what's going to happen? Like, to me, right now, they have so many factors that are a time bomb to their lives just ending radically. Like, this, like, the seasons. What's going to happen with the seasons here? Like, are they going to die slowly then because of the overly amount of oxygen in the air? Or it's actually, like, what survived this mutation on the planet that actually out to get them? Like, you've done a great job hiding maybe, like, bones and things of something that did not survive it, that could or that died because of that could give a hint, like something else is lurking here besides the first Lilith.
It's interesting that the terrestrial birds could manage to fly in double gravity. That's pretty special.
Right. Shh. It's one of the story problems.
But
sorry,
you know,
scientist.
I was just thinking about something that Gio just said from that documentary on Netflix. They could be gliding.
Yeah.
You know? And that would surely explain Lilith jump into midair after a sneeze.
Yeah.
Because the
Which
I don't know.
one?
I'm just
Which one? The
thinking
one didn't
about it.
sneeze, but she can jump in me there.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think that in my head, the idea is that the bacteria kind of treats the planet like a bit of a petri dish, and it sort of kind of adjusts, tweaks, and it's just trying to make a viable product. It, like trying to get like a bird to work. What does it take to get a bird to work? And
yeah,
then it kind of that's kind of the.
You actually explain it on the comic beautifully and clearly. Like when they are explaining what the AI mission or programming is to make sure that human life actually preserves itself on the planet. But when you think about it, it's not only human life. Like we will not be able to exist or live on anywhere if it's just us and nothing else. You know.
Yeah.
And I mean, not even
we need the insects, we need the birds, we need the bees, we need everything.
Exactly.
We're like,
I mean, I'll go further.
Traveler who takes everything with them to another, because the idea that we just sort of get off and it's we
landing. Hey, I'm home. That's it. Yeah. No, not like that.
It's
And
not
Joe,
a trip
don't
to
need the
Hawaii, boys and
transplants.
girls.
And I mean, when you think about it too, just looking at it, like when they're looking at like the physical resemblance, like she's trying to tell, like just probing Joseph's memory to see how affected he was, because he was having actually concussions because of the damage he had. And basically, like he's describing how she was, and the only thing that he really sees is exactly the same is her square thumbs. But basically, like he's actually telling her like there's a lot of differences in her now physically, and that's a very artful and subtle way to bring that premise. Like they are not exact same copy genetically speaking of who they were neither, because of this adaptation to this new environment.
Yeah. I mean, again, like obviously, I'm talking about something that you guys haven't seen yet, because obviously I haven't made that comic yet, even though it's well in hand. It's the idea is that Joe's kind of at war. He's like, Lilith is kind of like, let's just go for it. Let's just try and get this to work. Whereas Joe's actually sort of at odds with the person he was. So he is so different now to that person that so it comes out in later issues that he's kind of, he's a totally different person, but he's still kind of tortured or haunted by all of that guy's thoughts and feelings. And he's like, I'm not that guy. I'm a different person. So that's kind of how the story kind of develops a little bit as well. Like that whole idea of, that you were talking earlier about Geo is that, it's not you, but that person thinks he's you, and then how do they carry on? Or do they become a totally unique person?
That's very rooted to parallel realities, because that's what happens to parallel realities. Well, is basically things branching out from itself into a different direction. And that's basically what happens with Joel. And basically Lilith is not waking up to that. She's trying to hold on to, I'm the same person, and basically she's also making her argument stronger by him not being mentally capacitated at the moment because of the strokes and not being to remember. But he's actually very clear when it comes to the mission statement. Like, this is a failure. This is gonna go bad, and it seems that it's not gonna be a fun ride for them. So I don't think that Joe is very wrong about that. No, I think he's right.
I also like, the other changes in the environment, like vinegar oceans and iron test.
Great salads.
Huh? Oh yeah. I'm again. I don't think I have had time to Google that, but I find that interesting. How everything is set up to kill this too. Even the water that they can actually drink, which is from streams, I believe. They taste horrible.
It's like blood.
Yeah, the content of iron. So it makes me wonder how they would have to, granted they're able to turn on their AI, they can replicate things. So I'm sure that they could eventually, if they need to, create some sort of filtering system. So they can have. But I find that really interesting how, the algae, it's turning the ocean so it can kind of help in the process of converting this
Oxygenating,
planet.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's. I could tell you why the ocean being vinegar is foreshadowing like something that happens later on in the story. So,
Okay.
it would make sense. I would tell you now, but I would obviously be ruining it. But
No, that's okay.
yeah, I did. Oh, do you not mind if I ruin it?
No. What I'm saying, you don't have to. We're trying to concentrate to the first issue, anyways.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, so like going back to one of the earlier questions, like about sending this bacteria to a planet and about how you'd be killing everything. One of the things we do know is that if we find a planet that via whatever method, and we photograph it, which is something I go into at a later date in the story, is that if it has water, which we can sort of identify, if it's got land masses and everything else, if the water is blue, then we wouldn't send anything there because that would be a sign of life, that the ocean being blue. I'm not going to hold myself to too much scientific rigor on that, but they know that like a purple ocean or anything else like that would be like a dead planet, a planet that didn't have necessarily any life on it. So the way you make an ocean blue is you fill it with diatoms, so basically algae. And so in the story, the idea is that the diatoms have gone a bit crazy, and it's actually I'll just spoil it.
But just in a segue to that, because I mean these are topics that I ponder a lot about. Like, not necessarily a purple ocean could be dead, because like we have a periodical table of elements. That doesn't mean that those are all the elements on the universe. So that other exoplanet could have a whole array of things that we don't know what the heck are they, that could actually make our periodical table of elements maybe 50 times bigger,
Yeah, true.
So, and I mean that's the beauty about like how beautifully it's made. Like we're transferring into like a whiteboard of bacteria, and we get printed out into it. It's like we are trying to break that barrier of thinking only with the limited amount of resources that we have as humans into a wider view. And I think, I mean, we spoke about that in a couple of episodes back. Like that's probably gonna be the opening to us being able to expand who we are and our capabilities, is not thinking just as humans, but trying to get outside of that box to be able to adapt.
Yeah, like that brings me to the question where someone says, okay, can we find life outside this planet? Well, what is life? Because typically when we think about that, we think about life from the human perspective and what we consider to be life. I'm sorry?
Carbon-based life.
Exactly. There could be life that is not carbon-based. I mean, how... I always thought about that. It's like, okay, for all we know, we already found life, but we can't identify it. It brings me to something that Neil deGrasse Tyson said. It's all about how do we know to ask the right questions so we can get the right answers.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why science, I think that's, in my opinion, what science is, a trial and error until we discover those right questions to ask.
And I mean, it was a very human, the most human thing in the whole premise of the arc is the procedure that was made to the planet right off the bat, instead of like doing like what we're thinking of doing on Mars first, like making a little bubble and going in our spacesuits, but basically not killing what's in there before we even make it there. And it was highly interesting. Like the tree of life kind of plays out that little bubble, but they did all at once. Like they even terraformed the whole place before they even did that bubble and pruned the whole planet to check what was on it. And I mean, I think that a lot of it plays like being able to communicate back to base and get instructions is like you're on your own. So you have to go for it, whatever you have to do, because by the time you get back, you don't even know if there's going to be a base to report to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And I mean, I found it funny when like Lilith is talking about like this was a billion-dollar dinner and things like that. Like currency doesn't exist here anymore.
No.
Like she shouldn't even bother of putting the monetary value of
Yeah.
things. And at the same time, it's like they're on a survival mission too, mostly than anything. And I think that right now, even though, and it was kind of ironic that Joseph was more missionally concentrated on the goal than her, and she was trying. I felt like she was trying to excuse him to put that primal instinct of survivalism and self-preservation too. Like, no, let's not kill each other. We have to see. And she's always pushing him back, even though he's the commissioner of the mission. It was so interesting, man.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like, if I can boil it down, I mean, it's the idea of the Joe and the Lilith character is that, and this is in my head anyway, is that one of them's a liberal and one of them's a conservative.
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm not going to tell you which one's which, but they had the kind of the fulcrum of their every argument they have is that one of them just cares about survival, and the other one is thinking about why survival is important. And
I think that Joseph is the conservative and Lily is the liberal.
Can I ask a very basic question? Why Joseph and not Adam?
I think that's the screenwriter in me not wanting to be too on the nose and like making it too like the reason I call it a cradle and not a garden. I just kind of seemed a little bit too perfect, and I don't know. I've thought about it since and thought, I should have maybe just given them, but I don't know.
I like it that way.
It's whimsy.
Yeah. Another, I guess, is a question that I have. Again, I'm still processing the information from here. The animals came, how they got transplanted. Obviously, they came as bioorganisms. Did they get it from the same? Obviously, it would have to be the same way as the humans, but was it from the same place or was it a different place? Because I was a little confused when they said, okay, the animals can't get into this area.
Yeah. No, the idea in the story is that they get made in the synth. Well, the synth world's like the kind of the place where the first elephant, everything, they all kind of climb out of it, or and then over time it finishes. Then it's at some point it makes a human, and then this field, this aegis, kind of grows around it to sort of protect them a little bit. But the idea is the font. The synthesizer is the place where it makes the animals, but it obviously makes animals in the ocean. It's just a more chaotic environment because bacteria multiplies and it creates algae and diatoms and everything else. So it does create some animals outside of the cradle, but most of the business stuff happens in this altar that the bacteria makes, where it can make all the animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the things that people don't sort of think about, because we exist in a point of time on Earth, and we look at the things around us. And even if you're into science and natural history and nature and all that sort of things, you look around and you go, oh yeah, okay, so there's fish and there's this and there's that and there's something else, and they all work in an interconnected web. And there's top level predators all the way down to like things that eat algae and stuff, and it all trickles back down and it all works in a cycle and blah, 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 blah. And it's all functional and stuff like that. But it hasn't always been like that. It's built up that way over billions of years. And trying to recreate that all at once on another planet with environmental conditions that may not be completely favorable, as in the example, this one, would be really tricky. If you have one part of the chain that is less survivable, and they just can't get it to live long enough to function as part of that chain, then the whole thing will fall apart, because part of the food web's gone, and that will kill something else because it won't have its meal, and then that will kill something else. And if those things aren't there, then the feces isn't going into the environment to then fertilize the small stuff, and then that'll die, and your whole web breaks down. So it would be a really difficult thing to try and artificially build up something like that took millions of years and lots of trial and error to come about.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's one of the. The idea is that for the longest time, when the bacteria in the story gets there anyway, all it does is make algae for generations. It just fills the oceans with algae. That's all it does. And then very slowly it starts to make these forays onto the land by making creatures that can move it onto the land and everything else. So it's kind of like a weird, horrible, nasty spider's web of this code that this bacteria is running, which is when you get to X threshold, do this. When you get to do this, and it's incredibly far-fetched, but it's also like, just from a dramatic point of view, it's obviously like amazing, because it's just such a horrible, terrible. Like, it would be like being in the most demented zoo you've ever been in, but filled with. But you're right. Like, that's one of the things I was really struggling with, because I was like, how? If you don't have soil is death. Soil is thousands of years of death that things growing. So how do you grow grass in a place where there's no soil? So so very quickly you realize that just like going back to your point, it's like, how do you make anything? So for the context of the story, this bacteria is just my kind of life finds a way thing, and the bacteria is it's like, it's clever enough to do a lot of these things, and it does it over long periods of time. It doesn't do any of this really quickly, like in the story.
So speaking about the period of time, what do you consider would be the period of time between arrival and being able to produce humans?
An awakening.
100,000 years in the story. That's what.
I figured that. I mean,
it's at least 100,000 years. It's like, it takes. We actually can get to Tau Ceti fairly quick. Well, they reckon they'll be able to get there fairly quick. Like, if you can get to 10% C, 10% the speed of light, you can get there in a couple of hundred years. This craft could. But then once it lands and it gets there, it's then going to take an unbelievable amount of time. So that's when we were talking earlier on about the Fermi paradox and like reconnecting with Earth, is that, when they finally do reconnect, I mean, it's going to be like 100,000 years in the future. So
the sun should be dead by then, right?
The other problem with that is that by the time they reconnect, the communication system will be outdated, and they might not even speak the same language anymore. So
100%.
I think they done. I think they done, and you did that also beautifully.
Yeah,
too. They don't speak the same language that Earthlings do. I do believe
the communication thing. They were able. When they turned it off, he was able to listen in binary until she can turn it back on.
Yeah, no, the idea is that was kind of like one of the, the idea of having like cortical modems, this idea that in the future we'll find a way to use our own brains to do the computation, and that you'll have something so that you'll be able to see things in your vision that will be able to, which aren't, they're being projected into your vision by a modem. And then obviously for story purposes, when they don't have them on, they can't talk to the AIs, because obviously the AIs kind of break the story a little bit if they're able to talk in English, so or whatever language. So I had to sort of invent a method so that, because it's like with science fiction, like, I'm like big Star Trek fan. The technology is so profound that it breaks most stories. Like, how could, what would be the point in, they were always inventing, no, we can't communicate with them because of interference, because of this or why, because of, and I had this
because
problem
the
with
Babel fish is on strike.
Nice. One thing that I would have to say that I really love about this story, and it's something that we have spoken in the past previous episodes, is how I find so fascinating biocomputing. And on top of that, we introduce a sort of a bio 3D printer. And I don't know if, Gio, when you got to that part, you thought about me, but you know how I always talked about how I wish technology would get into that. Imagine having a biocomputer with self-healing capabilities, just kind of like a, So I found that really, really fascinating because it plays into my likes into the science fiction realm. What did you think about that, Gio, when you and Raid as well?
I mean, it got me all worked up and excited because if you think about it, we are cradle of that technology being born too. Not only the treating, which started with little plastics, but now you can print virtually almost anything that is non-biology, non-biological kind of life. You can almost print anything, you know. But on top of that, we are also starting to get to understand nanotechnology as is. I mean, just with the RNA technology for the vaccine, for example, when it came out, that's DNA programming right there. If you think about it and you look at it from a logical, objective point of view, you know, that's literally you're putting code into your DNA to tell it what to do. So you're basically programming something biological with more biology, but it's actually man-made. And that's just the beginning of what could you do with a human being that you can actually perfect it or make it more durable, stronger. The genome projects with the CRISP babies, for example, modifying a human to taste to whatever tailor it you want to tailor it to, you know. So I think that, I mean, it just got me like jumping on my chair when I was reading that. I was like, oh yes.
And let me, before Ray gives his thoughts, let me explain why I find that to be so amazing of a technology. If you think about it, cyberpunk, the genre, the subgenre of cyberpunk, was created as a way to resolve an issue, right, and help us think about what solutions we might have. Say, for example, someone loses an arm, now in the cyberpunk realm, you can just go and get a new arm and continue living your life as without the limitations. And in cyberpunk, you can actually feel through that metal
Yes,
appendage. You
but
can feel heat. But why I find bio
cyberpunk,
computing.
cyberpunk, I feel omits that very important fundamental core of that evolutionary tale is they don't go fully biological. On the contrary, they stay on the mechanical side of it.
Exactly.
So
So
you
where I'm
see,
trying to go with this is the fact that before we have this as a solution and the only solution, but as science has become to the point where, maybe we can have bio elements to a computer or machine, that changes that whole universe into something completely new, and it could turn into a complete different genre where
yeah,
you have someone, okay, I lost an arm, let me
to
just
me, it
3D
is a
print
whole
another
different
arm from my
genre.
DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's a whole new arm of a genre, you know. And that, I mean, I don't know if it was purposely made or accidentally because they are drawing for what we know to have. So I mean, biological engineering, it's something that is starting to blow up. You know, it was not something like in cyberpunk has. It's not a new genre too. Like you have older movies like Blade Runner, you know, that play this kind of future, and these kind of things are completely omitted or goes in the show with one of the most recent episodes. Like humans are evolving to become one with machine instead of in biological engineering. We are staying on the core of what we are and not trying to become something else, but actually evolve as what we are into something else. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings a lot of questions to me because I think that this, I don't know how you would call this subgenre, but I'm calling dibs. The cyberpunk, so could we say biopunk?
Yeah.
It solves
Yes.
It's like that.
it,
Biopunk.
it solves problems because if you think, there is a whole thing of body rejection to foreign objects
Yeah,
that
yeah.
comes into place in the cyberpunk universe, but
Yeah.
in a biopunk
Even
universe,
in real life, Robert,
yes,
some people have artificial heart or
Mhm.
other implants, and they have had already. I think that I spoke about this when we were doing Cyberpunk or Ghost in the Shell. That there are scientists that had to develop processes where they can actually predict the acceptance level of an organism towards a specific prosthetic
Mhm.
before they even try to put it and actually kill you by accident because of it.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it biologically, it's like you're internally healing an entity without being. It's much more less invasive as a process. I see it because you are trying to regrow something instead of putting something uh, uh, alienated from it into it. You know, I mean, in the Cyberpunk, for example, like the parts that they have, like it has microplastics and copper and little metals that are highly toxic to us. And this is played on history too. Like Romans were so fucking crazy back into the Empire time because they're drinking from copper cups, and that shit is just like toxic into your brain. Drinking out of that, of course, you're gonna be a crazy ass eventually because you're just frying your brain every time you drink from that cup.
Yeah,
I actually read that they use lead piping to
yes
bring water from aquifers to the city, and we all know what lead does to your brain.
Well, you know,
just
I
ask
mean,
the Hatter about that one.
The Chinese back 10,000 years proved to us how very useful it is to drink mercury to become immortal. Doesn't work that much.
That's
But
great.
you know, I got so excited. You know, after Lilith, you know, just ripped Joe's arm. Which
hang
was
on. Before you go there,
I think that was a joke. Wasn't it a joke, Rory?
That was an Alita moment because she ripped the arm off and beat him to death with the wet end.
And I was gonna ask Rory, like, wasn't that like an actual like inside human joke too? Like, I want to rip my arm and beat the shit out of you with it. You know?
Yeah,
but
no, I don't know where that came from. That idea. It's just I was like, they're up in a tree. They completely how they get out of it, and I was like, well, maybe they just feed their arm to the the wolves, and hopefully that'd work out. And it doesn't. So
I also found very, very interesting how everything on Joe was hurting, but the arm that was the most hurt part of his body. Like, and he constantly will keep on reminding Lilith that whenever she would ask, "How's your arm? How do you feel?" It's like everything but the arm hurts. And the arm was the ugliest part of the body. It was just falling apart on its own.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is how I got excited when they got to the machine and they were able to print an arm from his DNA. And that to me is very, very fascinating because that solves the major issue with cyberpunk, which is an issue in real life. And I also wonder, because I feel that I like to think this is a brand new genre. I might be off base here. I don't know if you guys, what you guys think. I think
it's not actually.
It's not.
It's not. It's just the first
I
time.
think it's a perfect symbiotic combination of technological advancement, mechanically speaking, with biological. Because if you think about it, like when it comes to like databasing, all the functionalities of the AI, there's a lot of like mechanical technological institutions into it. If you think about it, but they are perfectly on combination with an organic matter at the same time.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, we know that he gets a new arm, a biological arm printed and installed.
But that's not in the first episode.
Oh, okay. But
you can go la 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 la
la. I wonder what other issues in this type of universe will come from, there's always that, I finally find a solution with a new idea. And later on, you discover, okay, that introduces more issues. Kind of like what at the beginning happens with Cyberpunk. Okay, if you lose an arm, you can just get installed another arm. And then we find out, okay, what about body rejection? So that's why this gets me excited. Anything that gets me to think and to this level, it's really exciting to me.
I read something not long ago, which was that in our lifetime, maybe not in our lifetimes, but in our children's lifetimes, the Paralympics will be a bigger event than the Olympics, because by then, if we go down this route, we'll be able to repair damaged tissue. So if you're someone who's born with no bones in your legs, you can have bones, and then, well, make them strong bones. And then while you're at it, why don't you make the sinews very superior? So then suddenly someone who, was very unfortunate and couldn't walk when they were born might be able to run faster than anyone else on the planet. And then, because why would you not make someone's bones and muscles the strongest they could be if you can? So then suddenly the Paralympics will be full of people that can run 100 meters in 6 seconds and stuff like that. So
hello, super soldier research.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, that's what it all detours. And I mean, there's this, you would say, conspiracy theory that most of the technology we get to see released to the public today has existed for decades. Like I heard maybe like 10 years ago that the 5G, when we got it, it was all already for secret agencies. They were being using probably 5G technology back in the 60s, and we just didn't know it because it was very high advanced technology. So God knows what it's on the hands right now that it does exist, but it's not
in
released.
2001, was it 2000? Yeah, 2000 and, well, let's say 2005, I was reading research, what was called back then WiMAX technology, which is now 5G.
Yep. And I mean, it just leaves you to wonder what else does exist, probably, and we're just completely oblivious to it because we don't know,
And I like to think, let me call this out. I might be completely wrong, and you guys let me know what you think. I think it's not necessarily a conspiracy. I think those are new technologies that people are typically not interested in. The research is in infancy, and research keeps on going until it actually becomes reality. And usually, for a technology from a working prototype, could take 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Before it becomes important enough to be in the public's eye.
It's also a cost return calculation. So when something's, cutting edge, it's very expensive. There's not a lot of places that can make it. Oftentimes it requires technologies that need a little bit of tweaking before they can be mass produced. It took a long time for electric cars to become popular because the batteries had to be shrunk and had to be higher storage capacity. And once that was worked out, then bingo, bango, bongo, Tesla took over. So it's often one part of a larger, like one small component of a larger thing that has to be got right before the whole thing is economically viable.
No,
I can give you an example of the. I don't know if you guys heard of the Gateway Foundation with their Gateway Spaceport. Have you guys heard of that one?
Yeah. Don't think so.
Basically, it's a spaceport that solves the major issue that we have with space stations, where it introduces what we first saw in film with the 2001 Space Odyssey, their rotation. The creation of artificial gravity via rotation. And this is in the works. And they have the builder machines where you're going to have robots filling this metal panels. There's a video out there you can actually Google, and it shows you how this robot feeds. Well, it's a pod. Usually there's someone inside driving it, and you have it's a construction pod. It has a pallet of metal, the metal outskirts of the station, and it would go and feed it to this machine. It's a kind of like a circular machine. They would it would actually solder the parts together, and eventually forms this
vacuum inside.
Well, not necessarily vacuum, but
the whole ring too.
It actually creates the whole ring. So there's a video they explain every aspect, every stage. But like Ray was saying, the technology they're waiting for before they can start building, although they have the machines ready to go, is the Falcon Heavy, which is the necessary ship to be able to send
Yep.
this out in a cheaper way,
Mm.
and in the quantities and that they need to send out to space.
Don't you mean the Starship?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the
Because
Starship.
Falcon Heavy's been working for a while
Yeah,
now, as far as I know.
the Starship. So they need to send all these panels, all the equipment, and the only way they can send all that together in the least amount of money would be using that technology, which is not out yet. But they're estimating that the most expensive ticket to go there will be about $1 million. How much does it cost right now to go to space? So that is a huge decrease in the pricing for the public. And we have companies like Hilton. They will have a module there where you can go and actually spend a week in space. But this is a technology that I'm excited about, but we can't see it begin until that other technology finishes and is working.
Yeah.
And I mean, it plays a lot that uh, that different possibilities of solutions, because that's also being considered a new possibility too for interstellar travel without putting us into a deep sleep. Is sending a mission where your great grandchildren are probably going to be the ones to see that, and these people are going to just live their whole lives on these starships, which also begs to the possibility it can be fun because they might have actually lose a lot of bone mass through evolution, like what happens on the belters for Expanse, where they will die on Earth if they're on water, because like gravity itself is going to just crush them to asphyxiate and not be able to wake up, or like stand up.
Yeah.
But
I mean, sterilize. They reckon 10 years in 10 to 15 years in space would sterilize you, even if you were in it.
Scott Kelly.
That was
Scott Kelly is the true story of this.
enough mass around you to protect you from the radiation, because the galactic cosmic rays would just sterilize you. So it's and then you just get cancer. I mean, like if you're up there long enough, you get cancer. I mean, it's brutal.
Yeah.
I wonder if evolution of humans will actually change. Like eventually you become this thing that is no longer human.
Yeah,
it's a possibility.
Well, Carl Sagan said, he said it will not be us that reaches Alpha Centauri. It will be a species very like us. I mean, we can't go, but if we ever did, it would be a species that would be different, like very different to us. To actually get there. Yeah.
And then we have the warp research technology. They're being done by NASA right now too. That's another exciting thing.
Yeah, and I'm not a physicist, but the warp drive is just like I heard it described the other day that they'd need the same amount of energy as you would need to crush the Earth to the size of a marble to create the positive and negative mass to create this wave that you could travel. So. I mean, like I said, I'm just a.
Well, we can physically field test that without really dying.
Well, they're really worried they would create. I think they called it a radiation shotgun, which is that if you traveled in this warp, you'd collect all this radiation, and they're unsure as to whether it would sit on the outside of the craft or it would pass inside. But as soon as you stopped, you would create something that would never have been created in the universe before, which would be this radiation burst that would destroy whatever was in front of it. And so,
to me, the Atom Collider is already scary enough. That we open our black hole inside of here. Even the one size of a quarter will kill us all.
Yeah. What I'm excited about is the fact that at the beginning, we needed the energy of the universe to make this work. And then we have scientists sit down, they're revisiting the research, and they get it down to the size of Jupiter. And now we're to the size of the Earth. So there's obviously an advancement on the theory and the research. It's going in the right direction.
Can I bring that theory back to the biological sort of transmission that's in Arks? People might think, all this bioengineering stuff is bullshit. They'd never be able to work it out. Let me just give you a feeling for how fast things are moving within the field of bio research. So the Human Genome Project, everybody probably has heard of that, at least in passing, which was the first ever mapping of human genome. right? So it had never been done before. Ever since DNA was detected and worked out that that's how the information for producing any sort of animal was stored within a cell, people have always wanted to know what was the code that made up a person. So they went, okay, we have to organize this. And it was not very long after DNA was determined to be the code that they went, okay, well, we need to work this out. So they started working on it. And it didn't actually start until October 1990, right? And do you have any idea how long it took them to sequence the first genome?
And off the top of my head, no.
You haven't heard? No, 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those were labs all around the world were running. And now I know the technology that they were using because they still teach it, or they were still teaching it in classes a couple of years ago about running out DNA on a sequencer and sequencing the peaks. You get all these different peaks, and then that gives you the genome sequence of a piece of DNA, and it's 800 to 1,000 base pairs. Now there's a lot more than that base pairs in a human genome. I don't know the exact number, but it's many thousands of times that long. So it took them 13 years the first go. Okay, now I don't want you to Google, but I want each of you to give me a guesstimate of what the Guinness World Record is currently for sequencing a human genome.
I couldn't
in
even
2022.
begin.
It's really short now. I don't know the exact time, but it's not 50. It's like they can do it in like a week or a month or something. It's really short now. Might even be less.
I go
5 hours and 2 minutes.
Holy crap!
Crazy.
Now I haven't read about this, but I was told about this by a distinguished professor, so I tend to believe what he said. But apparently there's this little USB device now that you plug into the front of a computer, and it's kind of like a COVID test where it's got a little circular thing that absorbs moisture, and you put the cheek swab or whatever you happen to do to get your DNA into that, and then you go away and you come back the next day and it's sequenced your genome.
Wow.
And that is they started in 1990, and I would suspect that they were speeding up as they got towards the end of it because it took them 13 years. But so 1990, that would be 2003. So that's 20 years. No, 19 years. So in 19 years, it went from roughly 13 years down to 5 hours and 2 minutes.
Wow.
That is some sort of bonkers acceleration of technology, right?
But how many times, Robert and Ray, you tell me, how many times have I said that it's consequential that we exponentially, the evolution of technology just becomes more and more. Like in the last 30 years, we have been able to create things that have not been done in hundreds of years.
You imagine when quantum computer becomes a reality in this type of research of the genome?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's going to be paramount to it. And I mean, all of these things are going to change who we are as a social being too. I'm sure of it, which is something quite amazing. And I mean, it just lets me to wonder, what are we going to be? It's like when we're talking about Gattaca, which is all about genetic modifications, like how we change humans socially, like how they actually mate when they are a valid individual versus when they are invalid individuals. They look more like what we consider to be a normal person, You
see, Ray, how previous episodes just happened to show up. That was an episode that we recorded. We had a lot of fun, and I heard a lot of comments from people on that. It just happens, Roy. And Rory, I hope you enjoy our derailments. How is it that we say, Ray?
Rails, where we're going, we don't need rails.
Or like I say, train in the water, boat in the rails.
Oh man. So yeah, this is the kind of conversations that we're like having, and the reason why when me and Gio cannot sit down and watch a movie together.
Oh yeah. We will sit down and watch a movie that is an hour and a half and take 6-7 hours to actually watch it.
Oh man. So yeah, if you guys have not had a chance to pick up this comic book, I will actually put a link in the description, so you can actually purchase your copy. It's well worth it. I think you have actually heard from all of us here that have experienced this. Uh, it's anywhere from the illustrations, which I find very, very well made, very beautifully made is the word, to the actual. Oh, hold on a second. This is. Yes, for all of you who are actually not watching us on YouTube until a month after the release, Ray has actually placed a really nice animation on the screen. You care to explain for those who are not?
I think this is one's from Back to the Future Part 3. It's when the train goes off the incomplete bridge down into the chasm. No, don't need any rails. We know where we're going.
Wow, that's cool. So yes, I will be putting a link so you guys can get a copy of it. You hear us talking about this. We're definitely fans now. So you guys should go ahead and pick up a copy. Do we have any final thoughts before we move on to the last segment?
I mean, to all our listeners, like, what are you waiting for? Like, this is like a new frontier of comic book and storytelling as a whole. To me, I mean, it completely rubbed me away, kept me captivated, like completely curious about what's going on. It's just completely, it's a state of the art comic, is what I would call it. And I mean, it's an honor to have Rory here with us today and talk about it. I mean, this is the kind of conversation. This is what we love doing, Rory.
Oh yes.
Well, you guys are my first. I haven't talked to anyone really about it. So, and I want to say thank you to all of you guys, because what you're doing, you're getting up early, you're staying up late to talk to me. It's just wonderful. And it's like, especially when you're an indie creator, it's like, you're not just competing with other indie creators, you're creating with Star Wars and everything else. So it's getting a little bit of light is it's a big deal. So thank you for giving me your time. It's been amazing.
Hey guys, we popped his podcast cherry.
It's a beautiful experience. I'll never forget it.
Awesome. Ray, do you have any final thoughts on this before we move on?
Okay, well, as a trained scientist, there is a little bit of suspension of disbelief in some of the factors, but I've got to say, considering, Rory, that you are not a trained scientist, you've done a remarkable job with this in keeping at least a plausible level of internal consistency.
Thank you very much.
And the fact that I mean, there's not a lot of visible hand waving. There's a few things you've just glossed over because you didn't have an answer for, and that's fair enough. I mean, it happens all the time in storytelling. I'm a writer myself, so I know what it's like. I'm the most brutal person there is in my own work because I want it to have internal consistency. And being a scientist, I won't put up with just a hand waving. There's got to be a reason, even if it's magic. So, but obviously this is hard science. There's no magic. My personal feeling is that rather than going with a fully biological system, they would go with a combination of self-replicating nanites, programmed nanites, and a biological system, so that rather than expecting the biological system to be able to deal with all issues that might spring up with a non-thinking, non-reactive system, you'd have like nanites that adjust the bacteria to the environment. Like it'll scan the environment, get the data, go, okay, more gravity or more pressure, it will need, thicker skin or bigger lungs or what have you, and tweak things. So it would be more of a directed evolution to match the environment rather than a suck it and see kind of situation. But I think you've gone along the right track and you've really sort of pulled a whole lot of ideas together. You obviously read widely and discussed things widely. because I feel like, I mean, I've only read it once, and I do want to go back and read it again, and I want to read on and see where the story goes, because obviously it's not like a dry scientific paper. There's a story involved here as well, and that's obvious from the very first sort of prologue-y. This is like the secrets of the Bible versus what's happening on this planet. But on the level of the science, there's a little bit of hand waving, but there's a lot of it that really does hang together well. And then the storytelling above that, which, sure, the science is interesting, but the story's got to carry the science. The science in and of itself is not a story. And I think you've done a really good job of not only providing a decent level of scientific rigor, but also the story on top of it sounds really interesting. And there's a really good human element going on in there as well, because science is interesting, but it's only interesting in the context of the humanity happening around it. And I really think that you've gone that extra step and tied it all together really well with the story as I've read it so far. I'm looking forward to more of it and find out what's really going on, what's happening, what are these Nephilim? Dun, dun, dun.
That's lovely to hear, Ray. Thank you so much. And I don't think you'll be disappointed. I mean, like I said, like science fiction stories have normally got big asses because they've got so much to get through at the first, whereas that it branches out. I'm basically in this kind of human science experiment myself, because I have to delay satisfaction because I can't tell the story, because these comics take 6 to 9 months to make. So it's like I have to wait until I get to that point where I can actually like pay off the what I've set up. So you guys can see it.
The important thing to keep people reading is a mystery, and there's certainly a mystery involved here, and I'm interested to find out what it is. So I will be back for more when it's ready. So don't rush it, get it right, and I'll wait.
He's doing a great job. And I mean, on a segue to what Ray says, this is just the perfect environment for what Robert always tells us is science fiction. It's a thought experiment. And here you get to actually play out all of those things that we, you could say, you cannot do in the real world because they are ethically wrong. Here you get to actually play them out and even make them a telltale of what would happen if we just disregard that, and we get to play them out. What will be the consequences of that in real world mayhap being played out. So I mean, it's just all around perfect.
Yeah.
Just tell me one thing. Will we get past the whole glazed donut monster thing at some point?
What's the glazed donut monster?
Well, that's basically when a toddler has a head cold.
Right.
They turn into a glazed donut monster. They got snot just
caked
across their face, and they look like a glazed donut monster.
And since we made what they swim on vinegar, they're gonna be pissed off too.
Yeah, no, I can't promise the rest snot. I mean, there might be more snot if anything. So if I can't promise that.
I'm just hoping they get past it at some point. You can live on an exoplanet, but you just have to put up with the snot.
I love it. That's my favorite kind of science. It's like someone once told me, and obviously I've never been, so I don't know, but they say that the International Space Station smells of farts because it's all basically recycled air. So basically you go to this, absolute monastery of human endeavor, and you get there and it smells of farts. I like the idea that we get to another planet and we basically our noses are running constantly forever because of it. And I don't know. So I don't know that it does smell of farts. Maybe it does, but
and they drink their own piss. They drink their own piss.
It's like a giant orbiting still suit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh wow! So my final thoughts is, this. If you are a sci-fi lover, and I like to venture and say, if you are a sci-fi lover of the hard sci-fi, specifically, you are definitely going to love this. This is going to be well worth it. Its purchase. I remember having a conversation with Gio and saying, "Oh my God, every page is filled with science." So, and I think that's why we have to kind of like read it a couple of times
Yeah.
Because definitely at the beginning, we were kind of confused of what was going on, but it definitely pays off at the end, which is, I think, part of what Ray said, the importance of mystery and storytelling, and how it pays off at the end. But this one, I have read comics before. This one, I think it would be by far the only one that had made me think so hard, to the point where I can still say today that I'm still processing this story.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot to come. So
I think is well worth it, and you guys listening out there should read it. And do me a favor, once you purchase and you read this comic book, the first one, and then you come back to us and listen to us again, and reach out to us in either Twitter or our Discord. You want to join our Discord, or actually call our number, and let us know what you think. I am really curious to see if you guys agree with some or most of our comments on this episode, and just want to hear your perspective on this. Right now you're hearing our.
Are we going to have an Arks channel on Discord?
We should have it.
I would be honored. That'd be great. Yeah, we don't have a Discord, so great with you guys.
I'll send you the invite, Rory, so you can join in. And we can make an Arks channel on the Discord.
Great.
There's a lot of things that I didn't get to discuss here that are in there. I mean, hell yeah. Fill the planet with bugs.
When we come to release the next comic, if you guys are game, we could do an exclusive with you guys and share the comics, share some art and stuff before we do it.
You can count on that.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm kind of a bit blown away. I don't really know how I'm going to go back to doing any work today. I'm going to go for a walk or something, because it's like, it's been great.
Awesome.
Nice.
So, are we ready to move on to the last segment?
Yeah.
The science in sci-fi.
You want to go first, Ray, or you want me to go?
You go.
Well, I got some actual science fiction about 3D bioprinting. It's a type of 3D printed that uses cells and other biological materials as ink to fabricate biological structures. Bioprinted materials have potential to repair damaged organs, cells, and tissues in the human body. And I think that that's actually super interesting. I found that article actually in thoughtco.com, where they actually explain in more depth basically how this technology is being developed and where it's leading us to. So, I mean, it's very promising. And I mean, it makes you feel like when you're reading Ark, basically, are you reading sci-fi or are you reading A Tale of the Future? You know?
Yeah.
Which is some of the things that I think is this piece of art is just so masterful about.
Oh, thank you.
You done?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, because oftentimes you'll say something and then you'll add something to the end. So I was just letting you finish.
You're damaging me, Ray. You're making me railing.
No, I'm giving you space to grow, Gio. Space to grow.
Well,
it's like a marriage. Ray, it's like a marriage. It changes you, man.
Ray, you have to admit, Captain Chaos has grown.
He has.
He's ready to leave the nest.
I love it that you guys are getting in on the segment that I forced you to have.
Well, hey, I love that idea. And I don't know if you knew this, Rory, but this idea was born at the beginning of season 2. When we were designing how we are going to format the new season of our show. And he came up with that idea, and I was like, oh my God, I love science. So yes, let's have a science behind science fiction segment. And this is how was that born.
Well, there's so many things that, happened decades after a sci-fi show where the idea came from the sci-fi show and then engineers turned it into reality. Like the flip phone in the 90s or the early 2000s came from the communicators from Star Trek in the 60s. and the pad craze came from 2001: A Space Odyssey. The original idea for that was seen there. Yeah, exactly. But we sort of look at properties and when they're an older property, we can say, okay, maybe this technology we're seeing now may have the idea from it may have come from this IP. It was very interesting when we did the first ever sci-fi movie, which was was it 1902? 1903.
Let me check real quick. But
it's A Trip to the Moon, which is a silent French movie. Where it's
1902.
It's just recently been released as our most recent pod. But that one, because it was so old and some of the ideas were so seminal, we could sort of look forward and go, okay, there's a whole bunch of things that it could have, brought about by the ideas that were originally sown in that very first sci-fi movie. So that's the sort of things we're looking at in this segment. But of course, your comic's only just been released, but so rather than saying, okay, your comic is could be the impetus for this technology, we can look at the stuff that you're writing about and see things today that are going on in that direction.
Yeah.
And the one that I'm bringing up today is Breakthrough Starshot. Which you've probably referenced somewhat in your
sales, all that stuff. It's all
So for the uninitiated, Breakthrough Starshot is a research and engineering project by Breakthrough Initiatives to develop a proof of concept fleet of light sail interstellar probes named Starship to be capable of making the journey to Alpha Centauri star system 4.37 light years away. It was founded in 2016 by Yuri Milner, Stephen Hawking, and Mark Zuckerberg. So basically the idea is that these tiny little solar sail probes would be accelerated to 15 to 20% the speed of light using solar sails. And because they're so tiny and so light, they would be able to reach quite a bit of speed. And the idea is to send out a lot of them because they expect to lose quite a few getting through the Oort cloud and other sorts of mishaps out there. But basically you seed a lot of them towards the target, and hopefully one or two of them will get through, and they would then park in orbit once they got there, and they would start examining the planet and then transmit data back to Earth about what that planet's like. So we would then be coming up with solid data about targets for extrasolar missions. So that's the idea of that. And of course, your idea of a very, very small basically colony ship only containing.
I actually have I have a model of it. This is it to scale.
Oh, nice!
That's amazing. Man.
I made it for the conventions, so it's like carries a gram of bacteria. But it would probably need to be smaller than this. This is probably too big still. But,
just don't put COVID on there. Don't put COVID in
there. It looks suspiciously like an artificial insemination syringe.
That's interesting.
Perhaps. We're inseminating planets in it.
Yeah, inseminating planets. Yeah.
And on that one,
moving on.
This is called interstellar porn. It's gonna be a new genre.
You had to go there, didn't you?
It's Captain Chaos. He wouldn't, it wouldn't be him.
Humans bucaking the galaxy. Human bucaking the galaxy.
Oh my God. Okay. And Ray, moving on.
Well, that's it. I'm done. I've got the Breakthrough Starshot, and that was about all I could come up with. I did use my other one, the how quickly biotechnologies are moving forward with the Genome Project, and that I already used that one, so I can't wheel that one out again. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what Rory's put into this story is stuff that we'll be seeing coming along, at least in some form or fashion, in the coming years and decades, I feel.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
So I would call it speculative fiction in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were trying to come up with a USP for the comic on several occasions, and at one point I came up with science faction. And I tell you what, it drives people crazy. You say science faction, they go, "What?" So then we went with a much less controversial title as "This comic is changing science fiction," which again makes people go crazy. So it's great.
You could call it biofiction.
I might have to have that, Ray.
Yeah,
I
you
still
can have that.
I still
I'll
like
give that one too.
I still like biopunk.
Biopunk's great.
Yeah,
we
you're
should start a
just
hashtag.
stuck in cyberpunk, Rover.
Well, the whole thing about the punk moniker is modification of what's current. So cyberpunk is modification of humans with cybernetics. Steampunk is changing the world using steam powered equipment rather than fossil fuels and solar power and all those sorts of things. So the whole punk thing is a form of change, a form of rebellion. And I don't really feel like biopunk works here because it's not a form of rebellion.
No.
But what if I want to have a
all-
third eye? I can have it, 3D printed and installed on my head. So that
This
would
is
be a
true,
form of
but
modification.
I would agree with you if it was in Rory's story.
It might give you so much clarity that you cannot sleep, and then you're gonna be very pissed off after a week. You're like,
Hey,
cannot sleep. I don't know how to close this shit.
You'll have to buy a bottle of eye drops that's 33% bigger.
Hey, I can sleep with one eye open.
Nobody can jump you.
Awesome. So I believe this concludes this episode. I want to again thank Rory for being on our show. We really appreciate and I'm really happy that this is actually our first comic on our show. We never really thought about doing a comic
You're my
until
first
we actually
podcast.
awesome. So thank you so much for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. Again, for all of you who would love to get their hands on this comic, I will put a link on the description so you can go and pick up your copy. And remember, let's keep the conversation going. I told you this in every episode. We love the conversation about sci-fi, and we're really curious to think what you think after you read this comic. It's hard science. And I would have to say, I mean, if you're like me, you might have to read it a couple of times. Um, and that's what I love about is the fact that it makes me think. It's I venture to say, and you guys let me know what you think, but I venture to say that if you love hard science fiction, you are going to love this comic book.
Oh yes,
thank you.
I totally agree.
So again, thank you so much to you, Rory. Thank you for the listeners to being with us just one more episode, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this enough that you can come back next week and listen to our future episodes. Thank you so much. You have a great day and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.